He wanted to grow wings and fly above other men. The next morning, he woke up with hooves. This is the story of Lucius, a young Roman nobleman who had everything a man could want and who threw all of it away for one thing he was never meant to touch. It is the oldest complete novel the Roman world left behind, and 18 centuries later, it is still the most brutal lesson ever written about what happens when a man reaches for power he has not earned. Lucius was young, he was wealthy, he was born into a name that opened every door in the empire without him ever knocking. He was intelligent, and that was the problem. He was intelligent enough to be bored, and bored men do not look for meaning, they look for excitement. And so when Lucius travelled into Thessaly, the one region in the ancient world whispered about for its witches, he did not go there for trade, he did not go there for learning. He went there because he had heard that magic was real, and he wanted to see it with his own eyes. Ask yourself something before we go further. When you have hungered for something you were not supposed to have, was it truly knowledge that you wanted, or was it power? Because those two things wear the same face, and only one of them ever asks you to change. Lucius lodged in the house of a woman named Pamphile, a woman the whole town feared and no one dared name aloud. And late one night, through a narrow gap in a door, Lucius watched her anoint her arms with a silver ointment, and he watched feathers break through her skin, and he watched a woman become a bird and vanish into the dark. Most men would have run, most men would have understood in that moment that they had seen something that was never meant for them. Lucius did not run. He wanted it. He wanted it so badly that he went to the servant girl of that house, and he begged, and he charmed, and he pressed, until she agreed to steal the ointment for him. He did not want wisdom. He did not want to understand the world. He wanted to rise above it. He wanted to look down on every man who had to walk. And that hunger, that specific hunger, is the seed from which the entire tragedy grows. Because here is the law that Lucius did not know he was standing under. The universe does not punish curiosity. The universe punishes the man who wants the reward without the road. He rubbed the ointment on his skin. He closed his eyes. He waited for feathers. And then the fur came, grey fur, coarse and thick, spreading across his arms. His fine hands cracked and hardened into hooves. His spine bent, his face pulled forward into a long grey muzzle. And when he opened his mouth to scream, the sound that came out was not a scream at all. It was the bray of a donkey. The servant girl had taken the wrong jar. Lucius, who had asked to become a creature of the sky, had become the most mocked animal in the ancient world. The donkey, the symbol of stupidity, the symbol of stubbornness, the animal that carries loads and is beaten for its trouble and is never once thanked. He had asked to rise above other men, and fate had answered him precisely. Not with a lightning bolt, not with a curse from an angry god. Fate simply gave him a body that matched the truth of what he had become. That is how karma works in this story, and that is how it works in yours. It rarely arrives as thunder. It arrives as consequence. There was one way back. He had to eat roses. That was all. A handful of rose petals and the man would return. And in the courtyard of that house, that very night, there were roses. Lucius could see them. He was steps away from ending it before it began. He moved toward them, and before he could reach a single petal, bandits broke into the house, and they took every valuable thing they could carry. And one of those things was a grey donkey standing in the courtyard. They dragged him out into the night.
The roses stayed behind. And for a year, Lucius would search for that flower and never find it. Now here is the part of this story that most people miss, and it is the part that matters most. Lucius kept his mind. Everything that made him a man was still inside that animal body. He could think, he could reason, he could feel shame. Only his voice was taken, and because he could no longer speak, the world stopped performing for him. Human beings say things in front of an animal that they would never say in front of a witness. And so Lucius, the proud young nobleman, became the most complete witness in the ancient world. He saw what men do when they believe no one is counting. And what he found out there, on those roads and in those mills and in those temples, was worse than anything that had been done to him.
He was sold and sold and sold again. He was sold to bandits who laughed as they divided property that had never belonged to them. He was sold to wandering priests who carried a sacred image from village to village and sold false blessings to the desperate and who lived very well on the fear of the poor. He was sold to a miller who worked him around a stone wheel until his shoulders were raw, a man who beat an animal precisely because an animal cannot argue back. And Lucius, from behind those animal eyes, understood something that would have been invisible to him as a rich young man in fine linen. He had been punished for wanting to be more than a man, and now he was watching men behave like something far less. The greed, the betrayal, the casual, comfortable cruelty of people who are certain that the universe is not watching them. That is the great irony at the center of this ancient story, and it is the reason it has survived for 18 centuries. The cruelest animal in the whole story never walked on 4 legs. Lucius broke. Eventually, every road runs out, and his ran out on an empty shoreline in the dark. He escaped his last master, and he stumbled down to the edge of the sea, and there was nothing left of the arrogant young man who had once believed he could take whatever he wanted from the world. And on that beach, Lucius did the one thing he had never done in his entire life. He knelt. He did not demand, he did not scheme, he did not look for a shortcut or a stolen jar or a servant to do the difficult thing for him. He simply knelt in the sand and asked to be human again. And that is the moment the curse ends. Not when he was clever, not when he was strong, when he was humble. In the morning, a procession came along that shore, and an old priest walked at the head of it, carrying a crown of roses. And that priest, who had been told in a dream that a suffering creature would be waiting, held out the flowers, and the beast ate, and a man rose from the sand. Lucius spent the rest of his life in service, and he never touched magic again. Understand what actually saved him. It was not the flower. The roses had been within reach on the very first night, and they had done him no good at all, because on that night he was still a man who wanted a shortcut. The roses only worked when the pride was gone. Karma is not only the force that punishes you, it is also the force that waits for you. It will let you carry the weight for as long as you insist on carrying it, and it will set the flower in your path the moment you stop demanding and start deserving. Grace never finds the man who is certain he needs nothing. You are not made human by being born. You are made human by what you choose. So tell me something. Have you ever watched someone be cruel simply because they were certain nobody was counting? Tell me in the comments. And if this story reached you, stay with us, because the oldest tales are still telling us exactly who we are.